Hi, it's Linda from Lányos Handmade, and today we're going to make the Sage Satchel. There's lots of ways this can be made. I really like putting the decor straps on and the rivets. And actually these aren't rivets, these are Chicago screws. And I like Chicago screws because they have the different finishes on them. They're really fancy. This one has gunmetal, this one's silver, and this one has little rosebud type things. This hardware is from Atelier Fiber Arts. And so it's got a little B clasp on it, and this is the one I show how to put on in the video, this little B clasp. Which one was in the pattern? I think this one was in the pattern. So I just put rings on the bottom of it. And this one I did just for fun with the B's and the B clasp. And this one is different again. This has a turtle magnetic snap on it. I didn't actually do a video on how to attach this snap, but I can always do one if you're curious. The bottom of it goes on just like a usual snap would, and the top of it gets split in half, and half goes here and half goes there, and then it gets screwed together. But you slip this little magnetic snap on first, then you screw it together. But I can always do a video on that if you'd like me to. So there's lots of things you can do with this pattern. Now in the video, there's still threads on this thing. In the video, I did this one so you can see all the options. It's got the two-tone adjustable strap. It's got the handles two-tone. In the pattern, I did a different strap again. This is just 2 layers of cork put together. And you have the option of decorating your flap or not, because this one's not decorated, right? You can put the straps on or not. You can choose to put in the zipper here and the zipper overlay or placket. Depends on what you call it. I call things all sorts of weird things. But this is the slip pocket here. This is the divider pocket. It's just as deep as the bag itself. It's huge. And then on the other side too, there's a slip pocket and a zipper pocket and the overlay or zipper placket, as I kept calling it. So there's lots of places to stash stuff on this bag. Then we get to the front even. Now on the front, you can put this snap on or you can leave it off because the bag flap itself could hold everything together. So, you know, it's all up to you. You've got all these options. You can start off simple or you can do it really complicated, like with this one. It doesn't have the divider in it, so you can leave it out. And I explained that in the pattern too. You don't have to put the key holder on. You can put it on if you like. You can use D-rings, or one of these has strap anchors. And the pattern itself also talks about making strap anchors out of cork. So it's all up to you, all the different pieces and designs you can make with this one pattern. These 3 use the straps, but this one, you know, it's a good starter. It's a simple one, just a snap and a strap. So it's up to you. You can make it as simple or as complicated as you like. You also get to choose what parts of it you want to be what color too, or what print, because this one from the front is different, again, from this one. So there is a gallery in the pattern of all the pieces, and it tells you, hope that stays, it tells you what pieces are called and what you can choose from those pictures, what colors you want to use or what prints you want to use. You know, plan your project out the way you like it to be. Now in the first section, I want to make sure that you know that you have to follow the size of the divider zipper that's in the, that doesn't have a divider pocket. This one. You have to follow the size of the divider zipper that's written in the pattern, okay? The one I do in the video is a bit longer, but it doesn't matter because my machine can sew through lots of layers, so, you know, it's no problem for me. But you might want to be careful with your machine because you don't want to be sewing on top of your zipper. You don't want to sew on top of your zipper tabs. And you just want to sew on top of the actual pocket itself. So make sure that you use the size of the zipper that's actually in the pattern. Also, the other good thing to pay attention to when you're making your satchel is don't forget to put on your zipper pulls. I like this one, little cat paw. And don't forget to leave a hole in, basically it's a hole in the bottom of your lining so that you can turn, because this is a lot of layers to turn, and make the biggest hole that you can and you'll have no problem. So let's make a Sage satchel. The first thing I've got here is this is going to be for the slip pockets. They go on the front and back lining. Now these are optional. You don't have to put them in if you don't want to. This is the zipper placket, and it's going to be put together with the lining. This is a front and back lining inside, so we'll have slip pockets and zipper placket on the lining. Now this is going to be the insides of our little zipper pockets, and I have zipper tabs here too. I did not make pattern pieces for the zipper tabs. I do them a certain measurement, and I wrote it in the pattern and on the cut table, so you can find it on the cutting table there, no problems. And also, you know, you can make them your own size too if you have a specific size that you like to make them. It's up to you what you prefer. So that will have to go by measurements. I usually make mine a couple of inches by 3 inches, but you can do whatever you like with yours. So that's the zipper tabs and going to be the lining for the zipper pockets. And this is going to be the actual pocket for the inside of the bag. It's the divider pocket. You don't have to put that in either if you don't want to. There are instructions in the pattern on how to leave it out. So this bag comes with a lot of stuff and you don't have to use it all. This is the gusset on the inside of my bag. And this is the pocket on the front of my bag. And also in the pattern, it'll show you where you want to have, like this is vinyl, this is Rex vinyl, and this is fabric. So maybe you want to have, this will be my bag flap. So maybe you want to have your bag flap to be printed, but you want your actual satchel to be a solid color, or vice versa. Maybe you want to go the other way around and do it this way. You know, have your bag be printed and your flap, you know. So the pictures are in there with all the markings on them to show you that if you want to make a bag flap, this is where it goes, and you can pick whatever color you want, or print or tone. So this could be my bag flap, and this is still part of my bag. And on my bag flap, there will be these little decorative straps. You don't have to put those on either if you don't want to. You can just leave it. Maybe you've got a big, huge panel that you want to stick on the front. You can do that too. This is going to be my key holder, another option. And these are D-ring tabs. It's another option because you can use strap anchors. You can use like cork cut out with a specific shape. It's in the pattern too. And this is my gusset again. I've chosen this one to make my gusset the Rex vinyl. And this is just the back of my bag. So there's lots of options with this one, and all of them are shown in the gallery photos with labels on each pieces to show you. You can see that I am making a pretty basic colored bag and then making the flap. Even the front pocket is a pretty basic color. The flap is going to be contrasting. I'll put some straps on it. And inside, this is lining, so this is the pocket inside is going to be contrasting. But this pocket too, you know, you could leave it off if you like. Now the only thing I didn't give measurements for, and I don't have them cut out, I didn't give measurements for these, like I said, the zipper tabs, but I also haven't got my straps cut out. I was kind of wondering if I had enough of this Rex vinyl to make a strap. Hopefully I can, but there's a few options. You can make a two-tone strap, or you can make a, you know, just a solid colored strap with 2 layers of vinyl or 2 layers of cork. And the two-tone strap is for the long strap. I think it's about 60 inches. And the short strap, the short handle. So I didn't cut out the straps yet. And the measurements are in the cut chart and they are in the pattern. So let's get started. And to start off, let's start with our slip pockets. Now, I'm pretty sure I said don't use directional fabric, so what do? I use directional fabric. But you can see the reason why is this side's going to look good. And when we look inside our pocket, our cap's going to be upside down. I really don't care myself, but some people do, because I always feel like when I'm looking in a pocket, the pattern's going to be right side up to me anyway, so it doesn't bother me. So let's make our slip pockets. To start with, we are going to fold them in half and sew around. And when we sew around, we're just going to go here and leave the bottom open for turning. I use a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the time. So, you know, unless I'm really scrimping for space here. And I also use every single bit of scrap interfacing I can too, which you might be able to see on the camera there. So let's fold these first and sew our slip pockets together and leave an opening at the bottom. And after I do that, I'll come back and show you what I've got. So you can see on this one, I've sewn it and left the opening at the bottom. And on this one, I've sewn it and left the opening. And I've also trimmed the seam allowances down. I know some people don't like doing 1/2 inch and then trimming it down to 1/4. You can do a 1/4 inch seam allowance if you want to, but just make sure that you put your pocket in the correct spot when you're putting it onto your lining. So now I'm just going to go turn this and press it, and I'll come back and show you what comes next. And I'll reduce the seam allowances on this one too. I'll cut them down and then turn it and press it. Okay, now I used my little point turner and I turned this out and I pressed it. I marked the center line too, just because I want to sew a row of stitching up here. I do have instructions in the pattern on how to put a line here, or, you know, different markings. If you're using those, make sure you just test them out first, pin them and see if that row is right for whatever you're using. Some people have eyeglasses cases that are bigger or smaller, or cell phones, so you want to make sure it fits. So test it out. So I sew all the way around and close up the bottom that way because it helps me crush down these seam allowances. Not everybody does it that way. Some people take their piece and put their piece on here and then they sew all the way around. I just prefer to crush things down first. You can do whichever you like. And then after I get this sewed around, I'm going to sew it on by going down the sides and the bottom and up the side, and then once up here too, just to secure it. So let's get some sewing done here. So I've centered my piece very nicely according to the measurements on the top and the bottom. Make sure it's not crooked one way or the other. pinned it on. I have my center line here to sew. On this one, I've actually sewed it on. You probably can't see with this color, but I do a little triangle at the top here first before I come down and go around. And then I do a triangle on the other end. It kind of makes it a bit more secure on the edges. And then I sewed the centerpiece down. And if you look inside I don't know if you can see it, but when I look inside, I can see one of the cats is looking right side up at me. And the words are right side up. So your directional fabric will be upside down on the inside, but when I'm looking at it, he looks right side up. So I've sewed this one on. Now I'm going to go press it before I sew the zipper placket on. I have to change my thread again from this beigey looking one to a black one because I don't want it to show. But yeah, I'm going to go press it first before I get the vinyl anywhere near here. I'm going to sew this one on too, so don't forget that. And then I'm going to measure out where this is supposed to go and secure it down with some double-sided tape and sew it on with a black around the outside, not the inside. Where did we leave off? I think I'd sewn the slip pocket onto both of these, and I was changing my thread to black. Actually, it's black top stitching thread, just so I can go around the outside of this. And I've got my little edge stitching foot here, and so I will sew as close as I can. Looks like I think I'm going to put some extra Wonder tape in here to keep this down nice and straight. And I can measure it with this so that I can make sure that it's properly spread out, because sometimes they go wide and narrow, right? And that messes things up. This should be exactly 1/2 inch in this section here. So I'm going to use my ruler to guide it when I put the Wonder tape down. And then after, I'm going to sew around the outside only. So now you can see I've sewn around the outside. When I came to the rounded parts here, I basically went slow and did 2 stitches and then turned a bit, and 2 more stitches and turned. Go really slow and you can get a nice curve on it. Then after I sewed around the outside, then I cut open the zipper box, and then I trimmed it by 1/2 again. We don't need it on there. So I'm going to cut this one out, and then I can work on putting the zippers on. I'm going to start, these are my zipper tabs. I don't quite need them yet, but I do have my zippers. And I'm going to start with my zippers, putting them on so I can make my little pockets. But let's first take care of, this one's good. Let's take care of cutting this one out. Now when we flip it over, it looks pretty good, but it's not what we want. So let's cut it down by 1/2. So these 2 pieces are ready to put zippers on now. Now let's get the zippers. So this is going to be different because we have this right side up, and we're going to have this right side up. And we're going to make sure we have our 1/2 inch seam allowance that we're paying attention to. Yep, it's there. So I've got lots of room. And that's 1/2 inch seam allowance too, so I can cut this off after. Let me get some Wonder tape. I'm going to put it down just a little bit so I can make it stay. So this is right side up, and this is right side up. If I had a really short zipper, right, that was the perfect measurement, I'd want to measure the center and make sure that, you know, it's centered properly. But since this is a really long zipper, it's obvious that it's going to be centered after when I cut the seam allowance on. It's, you know, it's just going to be perfect. So now I'm going to sew right along here to hold the zipper down. And I can do 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then we'll put the other side on. So I've sewed this on. It's going to look weird, weirder than usual. This is the right side. This is the wrong side because this is the right side. So let's get another right side. And with this lining, it doesn't really matter much. And let's do the same. Let's sew the zipper on and we'll make sure it's right side facing up. So when I sew this on like this, it's going to end up looking like this. And then on the other side, you're going to have the seam showing like that. That's the wrong side of the zipper with the folds here. And this is the right side of the zipper showing the raw edges here. And that's the way this is going to work. So just to show you one more time, my zipper was right side up on the right side of my fabric. And on this side, it was right side up on the right side of my fabric. And when you open it, this is the right side of the zipper and it's kind of ugly looking. And this is the wrong side of the zipper and it's pretty looking. But that's how we are going to put it onto this. So that when we sew it down, we'll have the right side of the zipper. This will be sealed. And then inside our pocket will be sealed up nicely. So let's do this one first before we go to our next step. So we have our slip pockets done and we can put them in here. Now you want to do these opposite because when your bag is finished, these will be facing each other, and I would assume that everybody wants to have their zippers opening the same way. So here's the zipper, and when we put the bag together, these things will be facing each other. So we'll have the zippers on the same side opening. So right now, I'm just going to line this up nicely here. I really should cut off that zipper there and put some double-sided tape underneath it. And then we can nicely top stitch again. I've left my nice thread in there too, so I can just keep on sewing with that. And we just top stitch around here, the zipper box, to make it stay down. I'm going to chop this off here right now. We don't need that. So now we have these sewn on properly. You'll notice there is a big hole. We'll fix that. And you'll notice that our zipper pulls are here so that when we put them together, they will be on the same side. Again, I went slow. I tried not to overshoot the box, and I kept the needle down and turned so it would make nice little corners. And the back side's okay. And now we put these two pieces together, and they will not meet, but that's okay because we're going to cut the extra off. I just want to put a pin in there so I know where I'm cutting. Whatever distance we used for the zipper box is what is getting cut off. So I'm going to sew these around, and I've got the space to do it. Don't sew into your lining of your body there. And we'll pin these together nice too and sew around. I think I can change back to my beige regular thread now because I don't think there's any top stitching anymore. I think the rest is just normal stitching. Remember to move your zipper pull out of the way all the time when you're sewing. So we shall pull this up and just sew around here. I'm going to cut this edge off first. And then these two pieces will be finished and ready, and we can move on to the next thing. So here we have it. We've sewed this up. I zigzagged around because it helps hold it and stop some fraying. And then I sewed it again with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now we have a real pocket inside. So these two pieces are done until we need to put them in with the gusset. Next, we're going to do the zipper divider pocket. And this is something you don't have to do if you don't want to. Just the same as with this. I mean, if you didn't want this on there or this, I've got threads everywhere. You know, it's your choice what options you put on. Look at that thing, it won't let go. It's your choice what options you want to put on there. And so, you know, you don't have to have this, you don't have to have that. It's up to you. So this divider pocket, this is going to be the outsides. I think that's really wild. And there's my zipper. It's a bit too long. And I've got these really cool pulls. And so that'll be cute. And I've got my zipper tabs. And that's what I'm going to need for these things. Now, on one end of the zipper, we're going to put the zipper tab. And it's going to be, see, that's sometimes why I zigzag around, because my interfacing didn't really stick. But the zigzagging will hold it down. So I'm going to put my zipper tab on and sew it with a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to fold it back and press it. If it's really bulky, you could just leave it at this, right? And we'll work with this. We'll cut off the end afterwards after we make it, and we'll see how much it hangs over. But if it's not very bulky, you might want to fold it again. It's just up to you, because this helps make it sturdy too. So it's a 1/2 inch folds both ways that I do. And then I just sew across. And that makes a nice sturdy zipper tab. Now when I do it this way, sometimes I don't need the interfacing inside, so actually I pull it off. And other times I find it's way too bulky, so I don't even do that. I just leave it sticking out straight like that. And I work with it that way. So it's your choice what you like to do with it, depending on your fabric. I think with this one to start with, I'm going to pull this off. That shows you how well that sticks. Where's the other one? Let's see if I can probably, it's usually I can get one off, but I can't get the second one off. Oh, that's okay too. So on one side, we're going to put it just on the end. And I am going to make a double fold with this and see how thick it is. Yeah, I might keep that. And with the other side, we have to measure specifically what it says in the pattern and cut it off so that we can get, I don't, it's way over there. So measure how much length of teeth you need and add an extra 1/2 inch on. And that's how we're going to cut this really long thing, because we don't need it. But before I do any of that, I'm going to put this zipper pull on, because I don't want to forget it. That would be bad news. And let's see if I can do it just right now. Sometimes there's little tricks to doing it. Sometimes it works all on its own. Sometimes I fight with it for what seems like days. Other times I say this is never going to go on, and it does. I think this one might work. Yeah, it works. So there you go. So when you pull it through, it straightens it out. Notice how this is a little bit off. Sometimes people even cut one side off a little bit because it's easier to slide through. I usually just end up with it going in lopsided, and that makes one side short and one side long. So I'm going to measure out how much I need. I'm going to put this on first because I don't want the zipper to fall off the end. Then I'm going to measure out how much I need and put the zipper tab on the other side too. So I'll be right back after I get the zipper tab on. So I've got my zipper tab on. I should cut those threads off. And I measured and I cut. And then I looked for my zipper pull. That's way over here. So we're going to put that on again. And if we can't get it on this end, we are going to take this off and put it on that end. We shall see how this goes. I guess that's okay. Well, what do you know? It worked. Okay, so check the pattern and your measurements. Then before you cut, check your pattern and your measurements again. Then before you cut, check that your pull is on again. You know, you could always take it apart, put it back together again, but it's always nicer to get it right the first time around. I'm going to go take the iron very carefully to my little spots that I put on here because I'm afraid they might not come out later. So the next thing we have to do is put this on this side. Like I said, you've got lots of versions on how you can do it, but I think I'm going to stick with this version because it's thick enough for my fabric. And then after, we will take our layer here. I'm going to mark the centers so I can line this up here properly and put it right sides together. So I'm going to continue sewing this on and put my centers on my zipper, both sides, and all my pieces. Now here we have our tab is on both sides, our zipper is the right length, our pull is on there. I'm going to put it right sides together. I have to be careful with this one because the pull is so large. We're going to match up the centers. I'm going to have to watch out for the pull. You can move the pull as you're sewing it, go back and forth, whatever you like. But you're going to have to be careful with it. If you're ambitious, you can always put your lining on too and sew all three at the same time. I am just going to do it one at a time. So for now, I'm going to sew this on. I like having my pull on this side, the right side, and it doesn't really matter with this piece because when you actually put it in your bag, you can flip it around one way or the other and decide then what side you want your pull on, except for the fact that I also want to have my label showing. And I think I'm going to wait till I finish this, have my pull where I want it, have a good look at it, see which side I like better, and then I can sew my label on, nicely centered. But anyway, let's start with the zipper here. So I've got my zipper sewed on to both sides. First I put it down, right sides together, and sewed it. And then I put the lining on top. So it's going to end up being like this. So here's your right side, and your right side with your wrong side. Now we have to put this piece on, right side up, right sides together again, and we'll connect them up. If you want to sandwich it all together, then you would put another piece on your lining, but you would make sure, it's hard to see with this one because this one is not got a print on it, but you make sure you have your right sides together when you do this, and you have your right sides together when you do that. So I'm going to sew these together now, and then after we'll finish this off. So there, it's finished. We have, this will be our inside, our lining, and this will be our outside. I'm going to press it, and then after we press it, we sew it around. Now I'm going to stop and put my label on here, and like I said, I like my pulls on this side, so my label is going to go here somewhere. I'll measure it very nicely, and then that way when it's sitting in my bag, it'll sit this way. Now, like I said, if you want your left hand side pulls, you could use the other side. Okay, so I'll put my label on, press this, and sew around nicely so that it's all connected. Nothing's left out. how smooth that is when you press it. It's really worth stopping to press things as you're working. Look, before I couldn't get the ends to match, and now I can because I pressed it really carefully. So here we have our divider pocket. I zigzagged around because it makes it easier to sew these 4 layers together. And I've only got 2 layers together. So now I just zigzag around here and do my 1/2 inch seam allowance, and it'll work out just fine. I don't trim the seam allowances because this is the exact size you need to fit your gussets onto. Now we have our inside lining pieces all done. Our zippers will be here and here. They're all on the same side. And we're going to put all these together, and in between we are going to put the gussets. Now you'll notice when you line up the bottoms of these, I've got the center marks on here, and you'll notice that the divider is a bit short. It's supposed to be short. We don't want it totally at the top. Okay, and we shall start by putting on our gusset. I'm going to start pinning from here. There is a curve, so we have to follow the curve, and that means we are going to be trimming the little cuts into the gusset so it can bend around the corner, because without those cuts it doesn't bend very well. So we'll just follow around the corner and pin it together. And I start sewing from here and go up to here, and same with this way. It just guarantees that I'm going to have this gusset fit equally on both sides, and then in the end we will have a little bit hanging over. It's about an inch, but I like to have that hangover there just in case, you know, some people sew a bit tighter or looser than other people. After we finish, we'll cut it off, but right now let's just leave it overhanging there. So I'm going to go around and pin all this starting from the center point, and then I will sew it on and do my clips in the corners here so I can make it round. And then after, I'll come back and I'll show you how to attach the divider pocket on top of that, but we'll do one thing at a time. Okay, I have sewn around it. You might notice as you're sewing that, you know, those pins that you put in get taken out, and this gets pushed a bit longer than 1 inch, whatever, depending on the stretch. After I press it just to make sure it's okay and it looks fine, I went around and checked everything was a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And after, I'm going to clip this down, trim it down, right? And zigzag it so it holds it for sure. But I will leave it for now because there will be a lot of zigzagging afterwards. And now I can put this piece on. I got my little center piece there, so match those up again. And we're going to do the exact same thing with this piece. This one obviously will not match up to the top because it is shorter. So don't worry. Oh, better move that out of the way. I wonder if I can tuck it in here so it stays out of the way too. So we'll follow around, and wherever it lands, it lands. I think there's a measurement in the pattern of exactly how far away it's going to be, but we will leave that for now. We're not going to worry about that. Just sew it on and clip the corners. Do the same thing as you did before with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'll pin it around and sew it. And I'm not going to zigzag it yet. I'll leave that all till the end. So we have it sewed on now. That's going to be our first pocket, our divider. Now this is going to be our second pocket. Just going to line this up the same way again. I did check all the way around again to make sure this was a 1/2 inch or a little bit more is okay. We don't want it less because then it gets too bulky inside. I did not cut these down by half yet. I'll do that afterwards, and then I'll zigzag it. I hand cranked through here because this is a bit thick for my machine, but I can do it if I hand crank. And over here, you'll notice that this is shorter. It's about 1.5 inches shorter than the other piece that we have, the back. Now, we don't want it like 2 inches on one side and 1 inch on the other side, because then your pocket is crooked. And it just means that you pulled on the gusset so that this got pulled out a bit more than it should have. So just repin it and don't pull it so much, and it'll end up being about 1.5 inches, which coincidentally is also where this zipper placket lands. So it makes a nice look on that too. So I'm going to now pin this on and go around clipping again, clipping everywhere. And these will match up with this time. So our layer is on. We clipped, we sewed, we made sure it was at least 1/2 inch, but you know, it should even be more than 1/2 inch, because the lining is always good to be a little smaller than the outside. When it comes up to the mouth of the thing though, you want to make sure it's exactly 1/2 inch so it matches up with the outside, which will be 1/2 inch. Now we can put on our last layer and we'll be finished with our lining, except we should trim the seam allowances after, and we should do some zigzagging around. I like doing zigzagging anyway because it holds it together better, and it also makes sure that the bag inside the lining doesn't fray. So we'll just pin through here and do our clipping on our gusset. And this has to match up with, where did it go? Right here with this part. So you're not trying to go all the way to the top. So measure what you did on this side and make sure it's the same on the other side. And then you can trim it off actually. So measure and trim. And same here, measure and trim across. Make sure they're both the same length, what you're cutting off, so that this can be meeting in the exact same spot as the front and the back here. Okay, so we're going to measure carefully this side and that side and trim it and pin it around and sew it on, and we'll be finished our lining. So I measured across very carefully with my ruler, made sure it was right on the line. I love these clear rulers. Drew a line across, and now I can cut it and I can know that it's the same on both sides. So now when I'm pinning it on, I know that it's going to be proper height. So I can go around and pin it here. And here we have it. This is our lining all completed. So quite often I sew over the edges again because there's so much pressure that goes on these corners that sometimes the seams rip open. So I'm just going to back stitch over this one more time just to make sure these stay. And that way when I'm maneuvering it around, stuffing one layer into the other layer, it won't rip open on me. Anyway, we've got our zipper placket and our zipper pocket here and slip pockets at the bottom of our bag, and our divider pocket with our pull, label, slip pocket, and back to the zipper pocket again. Everything's sewn around, all the layers, and zigzagged. And if you haven't already, because sometimes people get carried away, I do it, and I sew right through. And then when I sew right through, I end up closing the hole. So make sure right now that your hole in the bottom of your lining is in the front what you've decided is going to be the front of your divider pocket, okay? Because that's where we're going to need lots of space to turn it. I say how big to make this in the pattern, but it doesn't really matter. Make it as big as you want, because really it's a lot of bag to stuff, and it's nice to have a big wide hole to stuff it through. So I did leave the seam allowance alone here so that I could know that it's a 1/2 inch turned up and measure it and make it perfect. I didn't trim that down. I'm not going to trim it down. So there is a big hole in the bottom of our lining. And like I said, it is in the front of our divider pocket. Okay, so now we can go on to making the outside sections of our bag. Oh yes, and if you are not putting in a divider pocket, the way you do it is exactly the way as you're making the outside of your bag. So your gusset is going to be the large size, not the 2 small pieces. And it's going to be, well, I can show you, I'll get one. So this is how wide the gusset has to be if you don't use a divider pocket. Here's the divider pocket, and here's the gusset. You can do this with any bag. Split the gusset in half. Make sure you have seam allowances on both sides, right? So you're making it a little bit wider. And so your divider pocket in between the two. So if you're not putting a divider pocket in, you make sure your gusset is as wide as it's supposed to be. And it's going to go from one end to the other, right? You just sew it in. So if you're not making this satchel with a divider pocket, use the piece again for the outside gusset and just cut it out from lining and sew it from this side to this side. Sew it to the front and the back, because we won't have the split in the middle of it. So that's how you make this without a divider pocket, just with a wider gusset. Okay, and if you have any questions, just ask. So how did that turn out? If you have any questions, don't forget to ask. I've got the Lányos Handmade Pattern Party group. You can ask questions in there and leave photos of your progress. You can leave a question here if you like. Don't forget to subscribe and like so that you can not miss part 2 that's going to be loaded up. We'll be working on the outside of the satchel in part 2, so don't forget to follow along.